If you can't change the harsh reality of life, you have to change with times. And if you don't change with times, then someone's coming after you. There's a tech coming after you. There's a person coming up. So you have to be extremely conscious of change and learning and growth mindset.
The Digital Banking Podcast is powered by Tyfone.
Thank you so much for listening to and watching the Digital Banking Podcast. If you enjoy our episodes, please follow us on your favorite podcast platforms. And if you're willing, we would love if you'd take a minute to write us a review. Thank you so much for being a part of the journey that is the Digital Banking Podcast. One thing you'll never hear on this podcast, sales pitches. Except this one, Java for Kids coffee. Every bag purchased sends $5 to the Children's Miracle Network hospitals. So now, your morning or afternoon cup can make a real difference. Check out javaforkids.org for more. Welcome to another episode of the Digital Banking Podcast. My guest today is Rohit Jayachandran, the head of banking and financial services at Mphasis. Now, what got Rohit into the banking technology space was an accident, but what kept him in it, though, was interest. You see, Rohit loves to look at life, and when I say life, I mean all of life, without a separation between personal and professional, with the lens of organic authenticity. But what does that mean? To him, it's a focus on doing right by everyone around you. Your family, friends, colleagues, customers, etc. So why is the banking industry so interesting to him? Well, think of how many people a large or even small financial institution has to do right by. Account holders, regulators, employees, and more. And guess what? Doing right by them is both super critical and super complex. Let's be honest, we're talking about being the party responsible for safeguarding and providing access to people's money, and that's kind of a big deal. Now, what he finds fascinating about the banking space is also that technology is now a capstone of a financial institution. And in all reality, they're just data movers. Okay, that's oversimplified, of course, but today, money moves in ones and zeros far more than it does in physical assets. The large financial institutions have been really heavily leveraging tech, but at the same time, they can't just alter strategy willy-nilly. It takes time and needs to be deliberate and well thought out. Even more important, it needs to be well executed. So this fascinates Rohit and gets him excited to see not only how it plays out for big financial institutions, but how it trickles down to community FIs as well. I love being able to talk to people who are just good humans. It's kind of one of my favorite things about the podcast. It's just getting to know people. And I really love people that are just down to earth and focused in the right places. And Rohit is just one of those people. It was super fun getting to know him the first time that we met. And I was learning about his crazy travel schedule that had one immovable element to it. He had to be home in time for one of his daughter's 3 birthday celebrations. More on that later. Now, spoiler alert, we plan to talk a lot about AI in this podcast. And I would have thought that you all are getting sick of that topic, but our data actually shows that it's the most listened to topic on the show right now. So I guess here's more of what you're looking for. And with that, Rohit, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Josh. Great introduction. Look forward to talking to you.
I love getting to know other humans. It's something that's just become so fascinating and such a cool element of the podcast that I guess I didn't really think about or set out to do when we started this show. To be honest, I don't know really what I started out with the intent of. Somehow it's just morphed into what it is. But it's just super cool to get to know people. And, you know, it's really special to see how much people share about their personal lives, even in the first meetings. And I thought that was one of the things that was so cool about you when we first met. I've had kind of a similar rule to you. When my kids were born, I made them a promise. I said, I will never be gone for work on your birthday. And so that's kind of become an immovable object in my life and my schedule. And I thought it was really special when you were talking about, you were like, yeah, I got to fly to India, but I got to fly back to Hoboken like overnight because it is just a non negotiable. I'll be home for one of my daughter's 3 birthday parties. So you got to talk about that. I think there's a fun story to that.
Yeah, I have a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, a 9-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl. It's a great age to be with them because they want to spend time with you. Very soon, we will want to spend time with them and they wouldn't want to. So I want to make you the opportunity to spend time with them, I guess. So my daughter has 3 birthday parties, one with school friends, one with her cousins, and one with friends outside of school and cousins. I have to be there for all 3 of them. Otherwise, that is a challenge. A few years ago, I made the mistake of missing one of the 3 birthday parties, which was not her real birthday, for an India Pakistan cricket game happening in New York, which never happens ever. And she still talks about it 3 years later, every time she can. Dad, you missed my birthday. So that's the thing. That day, I thought that I wouldn't miss her birthday again. So just make it a point to be there for every birthday party and every special occasion I can.
You know, it's funny the things that your kids remember, latch on to. And she's like, no, no, I'm never forgetting this. You missed one
Of
out
the 3 and not the actual
of
birthday.
the 3. And I'm never going to let you live that down, Dad.
But those are the special moments you want to live for.
I think that's one of the things that's also been really fascinating about the conversations you get to have with people on the podcast. It's interesting to see after 150 plus episodes, the conversation has just gone so many different places. And I love that I've been given the opportunity to just talk to people about life. And it's interesting how that finds its way weaving into the quote unquote professional conversations and the reason for the podcast. But those are elements that make up arguably more of who you are and your life and your view on the world than anything else, right? Because I think, I mean, I'm just going to say it very bluntly. We only get one shot at this life. And I think if you're living it right, like that whole KPIs at work thing, I'm going to be honest, that's pretty low on my priority list. Like being there for my kid's birthday, that's a lot higher. But that influences how you think and how you think about the world.
Yeah, and if you fast forward 20 years and when you're done with your corporate life, or what would you remember? The special moments with the family, I think that's more important. In 20 years, there's someone who told me that I'm always going to work because if I stop working, I'll lose my health. And if I lose my health, then it becomes difficult. So I don't know how long we all work, but particularly given AI, and I'm an eternal optimist of AI, and I think that that's going to help all of us, but all so much change and so looking forward to everything now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, right? The world changes around us. We look at different major milestones in the human race, all the way back to inventing fire and the wheel, to the Industrial Revolution, to what we're seeing now with AI. And we're constantly facing evolution and change and things happening around us. But if we're always kind of grounded in the core principles of what makes us human, and that's just being good to other humans around us, caring about the ones that we love and our families and being there for them, I think that sets a pretty good guiding light that helps us navigate all this other change around us.
Or inventing the concept of America, given 250 years last weekend.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You were saying you're a big history buff too, right? You were digging into that pretty deep recently.
I'm a big fan of John Adams, and I think he's lesser spoken about in the context of history and what he's done with his presidency and stuff. But yeah, big history buff, big reader of the American independence and that movement. But my favorite show was John Adams. I think 10 years ago, there was an HBO show called John Adams. I think it's a
Oh, really?
seven-part series. It's an amazing show to watch as well, including how Abigail Adams played a role in his life. When I watched the show, I thought if I had a daughter, I'd name her Abigail, but culturally we are different, so I named her Vedika.
You know, at the risk of getting down the political path, I think that's also a really good callback to one of the things that you were talking to me about before we hit record. And it was that one of the things that you really cared about is doing the right thing by people, but recognizing you're human. You're not perfect and you're going to make mistakes and you're going to look back on things and say, hey, I wish I'd done that differently. You kind of called out that An important element to that is being able to and being willing to admit when you've made a mistake, which I think is hard for a lot of us and a lot of times, right? And especially depending on what the mistake is. But I think looking back on our founding fathers, none of those guys were perfect either, right? Far from it. But a lot of the driving core ideals were to create a country where people could come and be free and try to live their American dream. And while I don't think any of them were perfect, I don't think any of us are perfect, I don't think we've done everything perfect over those 250 years. I'd like to think that the ideals still hold true, that we're trying to create a place where people can be free, free to be themselves, free to grow and succeed. And spoiler alert, I actually think a lot of what makes America special is how we've done financial services, right? And giving people the opportunity to succeed financially. It's something that I've been reflecting on a lot over this last weekend. I'm sure a lot of people have.
And if you add that with what America has done very well is technology, and you're saying that financial services was like the capital market that's done so well in technology. And that's why I'm so excited in everything that I'm doing because it brings together financial services and technology together. The concept of innovation, capitalism, everything's done well. And that's driven so much growth. And everybody makes mistakes. Like every journey has mistakes in them. As far as you can correct it and move forward, you're moving forward. And 250 years later, we've moved forward so much and the country has come up so much. And it's a leading, shining example to the rest of the world.
You were saying earlier, you're an eternal optimist. I want to come back to that and what that means, especially in the context of thinking about how America has grown over the last 250 years, how that plays into technology and financial services and AI. But before we do, I think it'd be really valuable for people to set a little bit of context around, give us the elevator pitch of what you do a day in your life. So it kind of helps people to understand maybe where your head's at in the types of conversations you have with financial institutions and just what that looks like.
So we help financial services firms use technology for transformation. I've been involved in large programs, first in the online world, then with a lot of work around risk and compliance, a lot of work in digital, cloud, and now AI as well. We are a technology solutions provider, and we partner with banks and other firms to help them with technology transformation. That's what we do. We've realized a lot of successful programs, and through that, we've learned. We've also had some successful programs, some programs that have gone south a bit, and you work towards fixing that and you get it back on track. So, a lot of strong technology background with financial services firms, and that's the essence of what I've done for the last 25 years.
But in terms of you specifically, like what are the types of conversations that you have? Because when you and I were talking last, I mean, you had quite the travel schedule. What do those conversations center around? And maybe, how has that changed over 25 years?
The world moved through different waves of technology. To look at financial services firms, right? The first wave that I think is if you take the last 25, 26 years and that as a time horizon, first came the dot-com era, which is I want to service customers using internet as a channel,
Yeah.
right? Like if you go back 25, 26 years ago, most transactions happened on a branch, right? You went to a
Yeah.
branch to do everything. Now it's sub 1%, right? So that's one big era of transformation that's done. The second era is all around mobility, which is having access to everything in your fingertips, right? That's been the second era that we've seen. A lot of work around that, which is, I think, one of the most killer apps in mobile was mobile check capture. Earlier, you could just see balances online, and then the first killer
Yeah.
app, what came up was mobile check capture, and those interesting functionality around that. Then came digital. What online did was just give a front end web channel to all core systems. Digital was more about transforming more, going deeper into the organization to transform. Somewhere along the line, cloud came along, what became important. How do you leverage compute that's not in your environment? That became interesting. And now AI, I guess. So those are the different journeys. And through different aspects of these waves, we've helped banks adopt these waves successfully. I always think What an amazing term is cloud, right? Like data, like if you look at who invented the name called cloud for public cloud infrastructure, right? Such an amazing name. But all of these different aspects is what we've helped banks with. And a lot of the interesting conversation now is around AI. I think with AI, what we are seeing is the tools are now available to easily get and up. The first 20% is interesting to get. And after that, you have to do some more thoughtful engineering of AI in your enterprise. We think that this is going to be an extremely interesting tool for everybody, and people who use the tools can have a lot more to do in their roles than not using these specific tools that are available to them. So adoption is extremely important. I think you have to adopt it. I think it can truly differentiate any bank and also break the barriers that you existed earlier, whether it is scale, complexity. Now is truly the time that AI is given everybody an ability to change and overcome some of the large entry barriers that you had in the industry earlier. So that's why this is a more interesting technology wave than the earlier technology waves that we've seen.
Change is interesting to me because people have to choose to change. And I am going to be the first one to tell you, I'm not perfect at
Yeah.
practicing what I preach, but the opportunity exists in front of us to change. The choice is ours, whether we change, alongside of it or we adopt the change. And I think that is one of the things that makes us humans really interesting is, you absolutely see a wide swath of people, regardless of what the topic of change is, but just whatever that change is, there's a large swath of people that choose different, paths along the opportunity to change within that.
I think what's extremely important is when you look at it in the context of an enterprise, culture becomes important, right? Do you have the right culture that you allow people to learn? There is this book that I read called Growth Mindset, which is all about how do you drive the right culture within an enterprise. And even for when you're bringing up kids, they say that the outcome is not as important as the process. When you have the right process, the outcome will come by. So focus on the process, don't focus on the outcome. Outcome will anyway come if the process is right. So you celebrate the process, you don't celebrate the outcome. So as people, we need to make sure we have a growth mindset with our teams. We are giving them the opportunity to learn. We are giving them the opportunity to pick up bigger challenges and solve bigger challenges. I think that's important. And when you have the right culture, then I think people are willing to take the risk, right? Because there is no downfall in taking the risk because it's a very supportive environment. I think that becomes extremely important. Are you able to show people the value of AI? Are you able to tell them adopt it? The risk is not as significant as what you think it is. When you truly see that the process is modified and you are able to reimagine the process, and that becomes interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I think anyone that's had kids, just watching them grow and evolve and learn is such a fascinating like microcosm. Like it's a really controlled experiment,
It
right?
is.
So I'll share with you. It's been really fun. So my oldest he just turned 5, and he has. I think a lot of people that know me or have listened to the podcast. I've used some of these examples of him in the past. He's a super analytical kid, right? He has to observe, he has to then process and kind of like formulate his thoughts around that, no matter what it is in life. And he has been into cars and anything with wheels since he was a baby. And he started life in one of those little, electric power wheels that I had the remote and could kind of
Hmm.
control and help protect him from himself when he was like 2.
Wow.
And then I built him a big kid electric off-road go-kart when he was 4. So he's been driving that
Wow.
for a year. And for his 5th birthday, he's said that he wants to be a Formula One car driver. And he's
Wow.
obsessed with Formula One. And mom and I told him, we're like, hey, if that's really your dream, you have to start in go-karts. And he was like, great, then I want to start go-kart racing. So we bit the bullet and jumped in. And for his 5th birthday, we've gotten him into like league kid kart go-kart racing. And where I'm going with all of this is it's been absolutely fascinating to watch that process, Rohit, of watching him And it's been really cool as a dad. Like, I would be absolutely lying if I told you I didn't get totally choked up the first time I saw him out on the go-kart track all by himself. I'm not there. I'm standing on this. I'm just watching him. And I'm watching this little tiny body, this little 5-year-old in a go-kart making his own decisions. He got to choose. How did he go around the track? How fast did he go? Where did he accelerate? Where did he brake? When did he turn? All of those things were all him. I had nothing to do with it. And I was having that kind of thought process as I was watching him of how do I make this an experience where regardless of where he goes in life, he learns something applicable out of this. And I was thinking a lot about the process versus the outcome. And a lot about how it was really important for me as a parent to step back and let him make decisions and let him make mistakes. But at the same time, how do I put some guardrails around this? How do I protect him? But how do I also foster that culture and that environment of it's okay to make certain types of mistakes? Like if you just drive this thing straight through the corner and crash it into the wall, that's a dumb mistake, right? But if lap after lap after lap, you're getting faster and faster and you're braking later and later and later into turn one, and then one time you brake a little too late and you spin out and you crash into the barrier. That's an okay mistake if you learn from it and you say, okay, next lap out, I got to brake a foot sooner. You know what I mean? And so, you know, again, where I'm going with all of this is it's interesting to see them as kind of a super controlled little experiment, but you think about that thought process of how do I drive culture and change within my organization, right? How do I teach my organization it's okay to be testing, braking later and later and later going into that corner. And it's okay to brake a little too late every once in a while and crash. Just don't go sending the thing into the wall on purpose. And when you do send it into the wall, you learn from it.
Yeah. And as far as possible, don't repeat the same mistakes again and again and again. In Formula One, you might end up like, or in a go-kart, you might end up because you always can't control the pace but generally in life, don't make the same mistakes again and again. I'm sure he'll be one of the kids who gets licensed to drive on a Formula One track sooner than he gets a license to drive on the road.
Is that funny? So my wife, my poor wife, I'm very thankful for how much she puts up with this. You know, I've always been a car guy. So when we got together, I was like, hey, this is a part of my life. You're going to have to get on board. So she totally supports it. But she's like, I don't need to waste my weekend coming out to the racetrack and sitting there all day boiling on the concrete and all of that. But now that our son's into it, she's like, well, crap, now I got to get into this. I got to learn about it. So she started watching the Formula One Drive to Survive. And she watched the most recent season. And she absolutely fell in love with Kimi Antonelli from Mercedes because he's so much like our son. Like just very similar thought processes, mannerisms, all of this stuff. But it has been fascinating to see her have to get into this and watch and learn and see the different drivers and personalities and all of that.
No, even I got into Formula One after the first season of Drive to Survive.
Really?
I think that was a cool hack that Formula One did. And now they have such big followership in the US. There are people in my office who followed it for decades, but I'm more a recent 5-6 year Formula One guy. But it's amazing to see the amount of technology in a Formula One car and how much data they process, how much split second decisions the data makes, and how fast and those decisions are made using technology as well. So we're completely, as a firm, also we're completely amazed at how Formula One can, and the tech behind Formula One is very interesting. Last year was different. This year is more different. With all the constraints on the cars, it's been an interesting year as well, I guess, this year.
That's what I don't know why I'd never really put those two together, Rohit, but that's actually a really kind of a fun thought process because you're 100% right. It's interesting how data can really drive our decisions to be a lot better, right? In any facet of life.
Yeah.
I've been just amateur racing cars since I was about 19. And in the early days, I had no data logging in my cars. It was just like, what did my butt in the seat feel?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what's interesting is when I got to a stage where I finally had data logging in the car, And you could literally look at every single element of, oh, okay, on that lap, I used 1% more brake pedal and I used it 2/10 of a second earlier than last lap. And here's how it impacted my time. I mean, it was absolutely crazy what it did for my driving, right? And this is on like idiot level. This isn't at a Formula One level. I mean, you think about just how much that sport has changed and how it did. It used to literally just go from the driver would get out of the car and say, I don't know, something felt wrong. Here's what I think it is because here's what it felt like, to how much data they have on it. And to your exact point, and now the teams are making totally different strategic decisions based on what the data is telling them. It's crazy. But you think about it, same thing in our professional lives, right? I'm pretty sure if we do X, Y, and Z, this is what our outcome is going to look like. Now we can look at the data, hopefully.
And if you shift it to banking, this is also telemetry of banks. Do you know how your most important customer journeys are performing? Do you have telemetry? What a lot of banks do well is they manage telemetry of devices. They don't manage for the customer journey. And at the end of the day, a bank's got certain customer journey that you want to preserve. And so that's telemetry. On cloud, it is cloud telemetry because how much are you consuming? Are you consuming more? That's the new discussion on AI, cost of AI. Are we seeing real value of it? And all of this is the same thing. Do I have the right data to see where the value is coming from? Do I have the right telemetry? Am I measuring the right thing? Am I measuring outcomes? So the same concept that you said of a Formula One car is so exactly replicable with a lot of what we do with the banks. And that's why we are amazed by this.
What, as you look across all the different institutions that you interact with, what do you think is hype versus reality in the AI space today?
One is if you look at AI in general, we are big believers in the potential of AI. And that is a saying that goes to the extent that you underestimate the benefit of technology, the impact of technology in the long term, you overestimate the impact in the short term. That's exactly what's going. You're overestimating the impact in the short term and underestimating the long term impact of technology. And if you look at I think it's a maturing field as well. I think the question is, where do you drive value from AI? If you look at, are people adopting it? If they're adopting it, are they becoming more productive? And if they're becoming more productive, are they doing something else with their time that is beneficial for the organization? So that's one. The hype in general is, I think a lot of people have overdone on POCs for AI. There's a lot of POCs that's going on in AI. I think that's overdone. I don't think we should do it. We fundamentally look at certain parts of the business, reimagine using AI, and then deliver to that. The big mistake that a lot of people are doing with AI is redoing the same process in its current form using AI,
Yeah.
which means like I'm automating the same thing. If you look at lending, for example, am I reducing the cost of the origination? Is that more important? Or the more important thing is to underwrite better and faster? Earlier, you didn't have enough data points to, now you have the ability to drive decisions using a lot more data points. You would have turned down a customer that you should not have turned down. Now you have a lot more data points to make sure that you don't. So if you look at any process, I think the mistake that a lot of firms are doing is to automate the existing process using AI, we vis-a-vis reimagining it to drive a particular outcome. So that's the big difference between what customers are doing well vis-a-vis not doing well. If you're able to reimagine the process, I think you're in a good place.
Will you go back to, you said you feel like we've kind of overdone the POCs with AI. What do you mean by that?
I think the way enterprises did AI was they enabled tools for everybody, and then everybody did an AI POC, which means that they wanted to show there's something of value. And what happened because of that is your cost went up. While grounds up adoption is important so that people get to learn AI and experience AI as they do it, I think there needs to be a top down transformation saying that here are my most important processes, and these are the processes that I want to transform. So if you just do grounds up development, I think you're overdoing it. At some point, you have to bring the top down transformation and say, here's the process. This is what I want to transform. This is what I want to reimagine using AI. By the way, this is an extremely important revenue process for me, or it's a risk management issue for me. So at an enterprise, you have to look at all your processes, identify what you want to transform, and then transform using AI. And when you do the transformation, reimagine. If you just do grounds up automation, that doesn't work well.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot of that too with just even moving to the digital world, right? We saw a lot of just, picking on financial services. We used to do this on a paper form. We've now done radical digital transformation. We now offer that form on an iPad. And it's the exact same form, right? Without saying, okay, well, now that this can be done digitally, is there a better way? Do we even need the form, right? Versus just saying we took the form from a piece of paper to an iPad. And I think we're seeing a lot of the same thing with AI. So you're saying, as opposed to kind of letting everybody say, you now have AI, figure out what to do with it, and having all of these rampant POCs running wild where maybe somebody's doing something really cool in their area using AI, but it has virtually zero business impact, to saying, hey, here's my, whatever, call it top 3 strategic priorities we need to move the institution to accomplish. How can we reimagine getting to a successful outcome leveraging AI tools?
Yeah, that's perfect. And the other challenge with the POCs is if you don't have the right guardrails around it, and if you don't centrally govern it, you are introducing more risk in this, the risk of hallucination, the risk of customer data going out, all those issues you run into. I think what's important to also do is to centralize AI for governance and controls, right? Because if you don't centralize it, you'll very soon lose you have to go to the regulator and say, I've done right by the customer, right? The regulator is looking for you to do that. So if you don't centralize it for transparency, guardrails, controls, then you'll very quickly run into risks. You're introducing risk into the enterprise, and that's a big challenge.
How do you manage that thought process with the whole, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, and I wanted to come back to this. I think this is a good segue, is talking about getting the organization just culturally aligned around AI, and kind of using our, Formula One and go-karting example, showing people that it's okay to break a little bit later, and then sometimes spin out as long as you learn from it. But like, you got to use the tool, you got to break a little bit later, you got to try that. But at the same time saying, we're going to drive from the top what we want you to do versus let's let you use tools to experiment and figure out where you add value. How do you reconcile kind of those two concepts?
I think you have to give them tools and let them figure out, because that's a learning opportunity. If you're in the software development life cycle, if you're a software engineer, then you use it and you can drive velocity in the software process. Everybody's using Copilot now, right? So all of that's fine. But if you're using it to run a critical business process, then you should have a top-down approach for it. So the key value of a top-down approach is measuring for outcomes. If you don't drive for outcomes, then what are you investing in? So you have to measure for outcomes. And then you say, I want to drive a particular outcome. And then say that, okay, if this is the outcome that I want to drive, and now because of AI, I have all these tools, this is what we can do differently. The other problem that everyone will realize is that in their jobs today, there's a lot of administrative work. If you go to an underwriter and say, how much work are you doing to collecting the data, vis-a-vis how much time of your day is making underwriting decisions, I think a big answer would be spending a lot more time on collecting data than making
Yeah.
decisions. So if AI can help collect the data, then a human can make more decisions. Every decision will be a human in the loop decision. We don't think it's going to be like exceptions would come to human beings. So it is a very human in the loop process.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
instead of the underwriters spending the time collecting data, they're doing a lot more of the time making decisions. So as people, our jobs are becoming more interesting because you're using AI to do all the mundane work and you're spending a lot of time doing what's more important to the firm, which is decisions and risk and revenue and cost, managing all of that, than being like data aggregators.
I think one of the challenges that I see, even at our own organization, like across the board, right, is balancing all these different things that we just talked about. How do you build a culture where people leverage the new tools? How do you not POC to death? How do you focus on the process and not the outcome? But at the same time, as an organization, say, these are the top 3 areas we need you to focus on. These are the outcomes we expect. And then not have people just go into a box and say, okay, then I'm just going to use AI to speed up the process without reimagining it. You know what I mean? Like there's so many competing forces in what we're trying to think of as outcomes. And I would argue, it's funny, Rohit, I was literally having this conversation with an internal team member last week. And we were talking about how, I would argue we've been a really, really progressive AI leveraging company before it was super mainstream, before it was everybody was using ChatGPT. And so we went through a really long phase of not really having clearly defined use cases. There was a lot of gray area. There was a lot of like, hey, I think you should be able to use this in your area to be more productive or do something different, but we don't really know yet. I would argue that's kind of gone. I think we've crossed over into a lot of areas of black and white where I'm like, no, I know you can use AI to do this. Like you have to. And so I think there's still a lot of institutions, companies, organizations trying to figure it out, still trying to wade through the gray area, while at the same time, there is some also just really black and white stuff.
So I think the way to think through this is think about it in certain segments, right? One is functions and processes that are extremely critical to the firm,
Okay.
which are the leading revenue functions, the leading cost functions, leading risk functions, right? In these functions, try to do a top-down transformation because you want to start from the top, you want to reimagine it. Too important to you. These are differentiating, so you can do that. Then you look at certain functions where you say, I'll just give you the tool, do what you want to do with it, but I think you'll be 10, 20% more productive. So if you separate it and say that, okay, I'm going to get 20% productive from here, I'm going to get transfer. This is a journey, right? We all don't know the right answer tomorrow, but we know what the best answer is today. All of us made a few mistakes like POCing to death, which is okay. That's how we learn stuff. To go back to creating a growth mindset and a culture of growth mindset. So now as you look at it, the way we think about it is identify the most critical processes to top-down transformation. For the rest of them, give them tools, protect the tools with the right set of controls and guardrails, and let them drive 10, 20% productivity. You should think of it as two different segments and deal with the two segments differently. If you just do 10, 20% in your most critical processes, what you're essentially doing is you're a bottleneck somewhere else. You're not transforming the process. Instead, someone else has become productive, someone else has a queue. John Smith's been productive by using AI. He or she has created a backlog with someone else's queue, right? So that's what's happened. So for the more critical function to top down and for generally give people the opportunity to use AI 10, 20% productivity. That's the way we think about solving it right now.
That's interesting. Along those same lines, you were talking about earlier, you're an eternal optimist about AI. I want to dig into that a little bit because I feel like this is a conversation I've been having a lot just over the last little bit, both professionally and personally. I had a really good, super close friend over the other night for dinner, and he owns a small business and they do like super high end car customizations, modifications, stuff like that, right? Just to give you a little bit of content, he's preparing a couple of cars for the huge Monterey Car Week, which is coming up this summer.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know, this is like the premier money spending automotive enthusiast event in the US. And I think his cheapest project they're bringing out, Rohit, is like some crazy one of one Range Rover that's getting a one of one body kit. And the body kit alone is like
Wow.
quarter million dollars, right? And I give you that context for a reason because, you know, That tells you a little bit about maybe some of his clientele. But at the same time, his business is kind of blue collar, right? It's a lot of automotive mechanics and manual labor. But he's also got the functions of just running a business. And what was interesting to me was he was over for dinner the other night and he was talking to me about AI. And he was asking me how we use it, what we're doing at a company level, how I use it personally. He's been playing around with it a bunch personally. He's trying to figure out how it fits into his business. And one of the things that I really, really love about this guy is he's just one of my favorite humans. He's just an incredible human being who just genuinely cares about other humans, like at his core. And I've watched him time and time again make decisions that were the wrong decision for a lot of reasons, but it was the right decision for a person, for a human. And that was why he made it. And so I love that perspective that he comes at it with. And so he was asking me, he's like, how are you guys thinking about hiring? How are you guys thinking about, reductions in workforce with AI, like all of this stuff? And he was really struggling with it because he was saying, he was like, I have 2 employees that he's like, I'm pretty sure I can replace about 90% of what they do with Claude. And he's like, so what do I do about that? And he goes, because on one hand, getting rid of 2 FTEs for my small business is huge. He's like, that's 2 salaries I don't have to pay. That's insurance. It's all of these things add up. And he goes, but at the same time, that's 2 families that have one less paycheck to put food on the table. And he's like, I really struggle with that. And I said, Tim, one of the things that we think a lot about, and we are really, really honest with our staff about, is I don't think AI is going to take your job. But someone using AI, if you're not, will take your job. And that's just the brutal reality of it. And that's why I said, hey, Tim, like, what do you think about? So you're saying you could replace 90% of their functions with Claude. So you're telling me there's something that you really and truly think they do that is so critical to your business that you couldn't fully replace them with AI. You still need that human for. I said, what if you taught those employees how to use Claude to replace 90% of what they do and just make them more efficient, more productive? Are there other things that they could do? Could they expand that 10% that they do that only they could do to do more? And it was just this total light bulb moment for him. And what's funny is, he's a really intelligent guy. He's a great business owner. He's a great person, right? But it was funny to watch this light bulb for him where he was like, oh, I never really thought about it that way. He's like, instead of thinking about replacing them with AI, teach them how to use AI, and then have the uncomfortable conversation with them that says, I'm not going to replace you with AI, but if you don't use AI to help me further the business, then I have to think about replacing you with someone who will.
And the funny thing about this is if you do this well, your business will grow.
Yeah.
And when it grows, there are enough jobs for people who are using AI and doing it well. So what we've seen is that as your teams use more AI, there's more adoption that's happening of the firm in the marketplace. So use AI, do better. As you do better, the firm grows and you grow with the firm. So I'm completely with you to say that if you don't use AI, there is a problem. And this is the thing about change. If you can't change the harsh reality of life, you have to change with times. And if you don't change with times and someone's coming after you, there's a tech coming after you, there's a person coming after you. So you have to be extremely conscious of change and learning and growth mindset, right? You should grow as people, learn, build, get more tools as you learn as well. So that's the way we think about it. Adopt AI, do more. As you do more, the firm grows, everybody grows, we all learn more. And that's the way to think about it.
So when you say you're an eternal optimist, what does that mean to you? Like, what do you think the future holds and what do you hope it moves towards in this quote unquote new world of AI?
I'm not a futurist, so I'm not going to talk about what's going to happen 20 years from now with society, mankind, and AI. In the medium term, I think we'll have more nourishing, fulfilling jobs because everything else is going to be done with AI. Everything that is not fulfilling, everything that's not content rich, everything that's not decision making will be done by AI. So as far as you focus on doing the right kind of work, as far as you're focused on doing decision-making jobs, jobs that are meaningful for enterprise, I think we'll all be okay. If you think about it, what we said earlier is there are in our day-to-day jobs, every job has a part of it that's extremely administrative. Just think about a life that it's not that, right? And the administrative part goes away. I don't know if there's someone who says, I love the administrative part of the job, right? I've not seen a human being who says that, you know what, I'd love this job because it's so administrative. So that goes away, which means your job is becoming more richer, it's becoming more fulfilling, it's becoming more interesting for all of us. So that's the optimism. And through that, we can all be productive. The society becomes more productive. And when the society becomes more productive, there's more money flowing around. As more money flowing around, then everybody, it comes back to people, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny that I think that's what's helped me, at least personally, in my own adoption of how I use AI at work. Is it took me a minute to figure this out. But once I figured it out, I've always tried to look for how has this helped me be more human? Because then I get really excited by it. Talking to you, getting to meet you, getting to have you on the podcast, that's super exciting to me. Yeah. But, go back to when we first started this podcast, right? When I first started the podcast, I didn't have a lot of the tools or the processes that I've built for the podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be totally honest, I'll level with you. It was really annoying. The podcast takes up a lot of my time. Everything from finding guests to having discovery calls to getting to know them to taking down all my notes to doing all the admin, setting up my Google Drive folder with all of the assets for that. It was just a pain. And so there was a part of me that really dreaded having to do the podcast work because it was a lot of extra work on my plate. You and I had a discovery call. On that call, I don't take a single note anymore. I just pay attention to you. I just get to focus my energy and my efforts on getting to know you and talking to you and learn about you. My AI note taker's running, right? Yeah. And then I have a Gemini skill that I've built that I just run the skill against the transcript and it goes and mines everything from the podcast and creates a set of notes for me. And what's nice is I immediately review it. I always do. I set aside just a couple of minutes after the call to review it because it only takes a couple of minutes. Yeah. So it's super fresh in my mind. I make sure that what the AI came up with was good. I make edits, right? I validate it. And then I just put it into my notes and I have it. And then today, I didn't have to stress about thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to go back through and I've got to remember all these things that Rohit and I talked about. And how do I prepare for this podcast? And now it's going to take me an hour out of my day to prepare. And it just doesn't anymore, right? And so the process of setting up a podcast is now so simple that I don't dread it anymore, right? Now, I want to just highlight to all of my previous guests, I don't dread the conversation with you, right? I just dreaded all the work that came along with it. But now there's almost zero that I dread about the podcast anymore. And it's made it a lot more fun. So it's made my job of doing the podcast a lot more exciting, a lot more fulfilling. And I think that's super cool. And that's a good reminder for me when I go to do something in my day-to-day life. I'm like, is this something that I dread? Is it taking away the joy? And is it something I can farm out to my AI assistant?
And someone said this to us in one of our conferences that in your personal life, just use a lot of AI. If you're going on vacation, plan using AI. So you learn how AI can help. Everything you do, just use AI because we all become more comfortable with it. Like when I go on vacation, I just say, Gemini, give me a trip for 3 days to Bahamas and it will tell you exactly what you need to do. And I'm not see how easy vacation planning's become.
Yeah.
Right? So everything we do, we should, in our personal life, that will use as much AI as we can because the tools are now available and we all become comfortable with it. And then we experience that how personal life, when we are doing vacation planning and if we become better at it and faster at it, then you know that going to the vacation is much better than planning for the vacation. So now you're becoming comfortable and then you can use that in your enterprise world as well.
I think that's also a super fun thing to get to know people, or if you're comfortable with certain people to share with. So when my buddy was over the other night for dinner, I was literally showing him my Claude instance. And I was showing him all the different conversations that I've had. Right. And he was just laughing. He's like, you are all over the place. And I was like, dude, that's where but now you see into my brain. And I was like, think about yourself. Right. Look at all of these different, I've got wildly different conversations going on, but now I have access to an expert in that domain in each one of those conversations. And so I've learned how to do a bunch of things that I didn't know how to do. One of the examples that I think really stuck with him was I was showing him a custom piece of software that I built for myself. And it is so ridiculously personal. Like, this would have zero value to anybody else, but it has so much value to me. And I was showing him that, and he starts laughing. He goes, "Yeah, dude, but you can do that. You work for a software company. You know how to code." And I was like, I am the biggest idiot ever. I have zero knowledge of how to code, man. And I started scrolling through my whole chat of how I built it. And I was like, do you see anywhere where this looks like an intelligent engineer who knows how to code? And he starts laughing. He goes, nope. And I was like, I didn't write a single line of code. I don't even know how to validate a single line of code. I said, but I know how to validate the end product. And is it doing what I need to do? And I was showing him instances of where something was broken in the code. And literally, I'm just taking a screenshot of the error message in my custom piece of software that Claude created, dumping it back into Claude and going, I don't know what's wrong, but something's broken. Go figure it out. And it figures it out. And he was like, oh man, I don't even know how to code. I don't even need to know how to code to be able to code anymore. And I was like, no, you just need to know how to validate that the outcome is what you need. Right? You have to be able to validate that the code that was created is creating the right output, right? You don't want to just blindly trust. But I was like, look at the skills that you can now do that you didn't used to have access to. And I think that's exactly it, Rohit. Like, I'm just using it in my personal life to solve personal problems. And then I'm like, oh, I could totally use this to do this thing at work for me too.
And I think the biggest differentiation as people and as enterprises is going to bubble down to finally, am I a good adopter of technology? Right? Because I don't think the challenge of large capital expenditures there, as individuals, both in an enterprise and as personal people, the more of AI you use, the more technology you use, the more successful you'll be. And it's also bridging the gap between a lot of capital necessary to do it and not needing a lot of capital necessary to do it. And that becomes very interesting.
That actually brings up, you mentioned something earlier that we kind of just glossed over. And I really wanted to dive into. You were talking about how there's something interesting about getting the first 10 to 15 to 20%.
The tool, if you look at generally what we do, whether it is around content creation, content editing, a lot of work around Office, a lot of that is now easily done using a large language model. Like, we're able to use it on a daily enterprise. That makes people, the first level of productivity comes from that, and that's 15 to 20% productivity. If you look at it from a context of a software engineering, if I use some of the productivity improvement tools, once I start using it, it is easy to get to 15, 20% in about 6 to 9 months. That 15 to 20% is a lot of value for enterprises, right? Like, suddenly, like, your employees say, I'm 20% more productive. What can I do with my time? And when you have more employees, the more value comes out of it. So that's easy. The next set of value comes from what's most important with AI is engineering context. What you did in your software development effort is you engineered your personal context. This is what my software needs to do. Your personal context is what you engineered. I think that's what banks need to do. That's what a lot of financial services firms need to do. And through that, you can drive from 20 to the next 30%, which is get to 50% and drive more value out of it. But if you look at a lot of the banks, there are banks that have been here for a few centuries as well, right? Some of them are long tenured institutions. A lot of the reasons why banks work is encoded in documents, in some old software code that no one's touched for decades. So how do you know what's there? So how do you use the large language model? Go learn that and build the context of why your bank is successful and build it out. And that becomes extremely important to drive from 20 to 50%. The first 20, you're just using the tools as it is. And then the next, after that, you have to start engineering context. And that becomes extremely important.
When you say institutions need to do that, what have you seen as maybe some good examples of that?
So there are firms that have done a lot of work around client onboarding, for example. which is, can I automate the process of customer onboarding? Right now, for a complex customer, I'm talking about institutional business, it takes anywhere between 1 to 3 months. Can I bring it down to weeks? Like you're simplifying the process of onboarding. If you look at customer service, there was a statement from many years ago that I remember: the best customer service is no service at all, which is I don't need to call you at all,
Yeah.
right? Like that is more proactiveness. So that's become a big proactive customer service, proactive system management, all of that, all of those are interesting use cases. I spoke to you about lending, which is how do I process more loans faster? Right now, I take 50 days to get to processing a loan. By the time I get to it, the customer has gone somewhere else, or I'm not able to process the incoming funnel itself properly. There are firms that are using AI to manage that better. As I said, the tools are not as important as the outcome that you're driving, and you start with the
Yeah.
outcome and then figure the tools. If you start with the tools and try to drive the outcome, you're not getting to the right place.
I love the example of the knowledge transfer because that's really difficult, right? In super nuanced industries and industries where there's a lot of tenure, which I think financial services
Yeah.
is a great example of that, is people with really long tenure. I love it. I'm meeting a new credit union or community bank and we're doing introductions and somebody says, yeah, I'm the young pup here. I've only been here 25 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you get this incredible legacy knowledge, but how do you transfer that? And it's one of the things that LLMs are so good at is processing really large data sets. And, I love this as an example that we recently did that has helped me and my team. A lot of times I'll be talking with our team internally, I'll be talking to customers or prospective customers, and somebody will say like, wow, you're so insightful. You've got such great knowledge. Like, how did you get this? Or how are you so smart? And I'm just laughing and I'm like, man, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. I'm just a really good sponge. And I've had the pleasure of talking to over 150 podcast guests. I just stole something someone else said. And my team is always like,
Yeah.
I wish I had all that knowledge, but I don't. Right. And you think about our podcast. So, with how many episodes we've done and the average runtime of each of these, it's somewhere over 200 plus hours of spoken word. That's a ton of knowledge that
Yeah.
I'm just really, really fortunate to have gotten. Now, unless every single person at my company wants to listen to every single minute of me yapping away, which trust me, they don't want any more of, and listen to every single episode of the podcast, it's really
Yeah.
hard for them to have all of this knowledge and context that I've absorbed over the
Yeah.
years. Now it just all lives in an internal LLM that my team has access to. Every single transcript of every single episode that you can just query at random. It's super cool. Now, all of this becomes information that can shape how we talk about things. Now we've got all of this great industry insight, right? That's pretty cool to be able to do as just a really good knowledge transfer. So I love that example.
And if you look at the workforce itself, right? Someone said this to me last week. They said that I have my 20% star performers. If I can use AI to learn from the 20% and make 80% also a star performer, see how beneficial I'll be.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of ways, you're leveling the playing field. You're making a lot more people more productive. So that's the reason why I think that all of us will have more fulfilling, nourishing jobs. As to your earlier question on eternal optimist, I think all of us would now have more fulfilling, nourishing jobs for us.
I think that's a great takeaway, right? You mentioned it earlier. Just play with it. Use it in your personal life, use it in your professional life,
Yeah.
the correct guardrails of your institution and organization. But especially in your personal life, use this stuff. Try it out. Try different things. Let it help you and solve different problems for you, help educate you in certain areas. You'll be amazed at what you can learn and do. But you just got to get out there and try
Yeah.
and play with it. It's here to stay. It is absolutely changing the foundation of how work is done and how society operates. So get on board. But I think from two people who obviously agree, so you're not going to get us arguing on this topic, but
Yeah.
use it to be more human.
Mhm.
You'll actually be amazed if you kind of use that as a guiding light.
Oh yeah, I think generally be more productive. You can do more things in life, and it becomes more easy that way.
And more fulfilling, like you said. I love that.
Hmm.
So now you can spend, now you can give your daughter 4 birthday parties.
For birthday parties, yeah. If that's the impact of the wallet when she's 7, can you imagine what's happening at 70? See
I
the
think I've
blessing.
learned enough about you to know that you're going to be a total sucker for it too. And if she's like, I need a birthday party for every year I am old, then when she's 40, you're going to be giving her 40 birthday parties, man.
40
I can
birthday
see it.
parties, yeah.
Rohit, thank you so much for coming and being a guest. But before I let you go, I have 2 final questions for you. Where do you go to get information about what's happening? Where are you going to stay up to date on what's happening in the AI world?
One is from a financial services perspective, a lot of research and publication happens in like American Banker Association, and those publications is the big one. The second is if you follow the right people on Twitter, you get to the right content. It's important to follow the right people on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you are, to make sure, because now content's coming from the thing about AI revolution, it's content's coming from a lot of people in a lot of places. So the best way to consume it is through something like a Twitter. That's been a big focus for me in terms of collecting, learning about AI. So that's where I go for my content. There are tech papers like TechCrunch, and that's interesting as well. So those are some of the sources that I use to get content on AI and stay up to speed.
Cool. And then if people want to connect with you, or if they want to learn more about Mphasis and what you guys are doing in the banking space, where and how can they do that?
Mphasis.com, that's the website. I'm available on LinkedIn. I access that Rohit. I think it's Rohit J, but you'll see me use my name and you'll find me on LinkedIn. And I'm accessible to everyone, and I make sure I reply to everything that comes my way.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Well, again, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's such a fun way to see how fast you can kill over an hour of talking to somebody when it's interesting.
Thank you, Josh. No, it's been a great pleasure as well. I didn't know about your car fascination. We, as a firm, we are big fans of Formula One as well, so that's interesting. Our
Wow.
brand's there on the Haas car, so that's interesting as well.
Now I got to go back and look.
Yeah.
They've had a rough go. Maybe next time we'll have to do this in person at
We should.
at an F1 race. My
At an
son would
F1
love
race,
that.
yeah, that'll
Yeah.
be interesting. Might be Vegas it is.
Yeah. Vegas, Austin, and Miami. My son wants to go to one, so I'm trying to figure out. Yeah.
Miami's
will be
over.
next
Austin
year.
and Vegas, yeah, that's a follow.
Yeah, Austin is on my wife's birthday, and then Miami is, I think, March of next year.
Yeah.
So
Vegas is the week before Thanksgiving.
yeah, well, and
It's typically
so
the
what's
weekend
fun-
before Thanksgiving.
Austin is over my wife's birthday. Vegas is over my daughter's birthday. And when my son found out that Vegas was over his little sister's birthday, she's still young enough to be highly manipulatable by her older brother. And he's smart enough to know. And he goes, Sissy, do you want to go to an F1 race for your birthday? You should ask
she'd say
Daddy
yes.
to take you to your. She doesn't want to go, dude. Like, nice try.
But what did she say? She said yes, though, right?
Yeah, of course. She goes, Dad,
Oh,
can
man.
we? I'm like, oh my gosh.
If I need my daughter to do something and she's not agreeing to anyone, I should just ask her brother and then she'll do it.
It's that whole sibling dynamic. They are funny as heck to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you for coming and being a guest on the Digital Banking Podcast.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Banking Podcast, powered by Tyfone. Find more episodes on digitalbankingpodcast.com or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.